Hi everyone, it's Heather with Running with Scissors, and today we are doing the tutorial on the July 2022 box. That is box number 21. Box number 21. And you saw in the opening credits, the project finished and staged. This is the project that we are doing today. It is an interchangeable, if you would like. It doesn't have to be, but it is an interchangeable key holder. You got two key holder hooks here, and it says Home Sweet Home on one side, and then this side is just a little interchangeable piece. It's interchangeable with this little Velcro dot. And we have about 25, I think, different kind of discs that will fit into here. In your box, you're going to get two. Of course, I gave the first one away. It is the Mitten State, or the state that you live in. Of course, we're in Michigan, so we have the Michigan for the demo. But wherever you live, that's the state you got. And then we'll see in a minute what the second piece is. Now, this just mounts to a wall. It has D-rings on the back of it. You can also string a wire through those D-rings and hang it on a single screw if you would like. However you want to do that is up to you, or you can just put the D-ring, a screw right into the wall, two of them, and hang it, the D-rings right on the screw. All right, here we go. Let's see what's in the box. And actually, here real quick, I'll show you. Here is the other interchangeable that we included. This is the painted version. So that will pop off, and this one will just pop on. All right, let's get going. All right, as always, you have a set of instructions. Your instructions will have a full color picture on them. And at the bottom of the instructions on this one, there will be a QR code, and you'll be able to scan that to take you to the link to purchase other inserts if you would like. We are in the demo stages of this, and as I've said before, and as you all know, we record the tutorial usually doing our very first kit and then make adjustments if needed. And so our instructions aren't all completed by the time we film the tutorial, because we want to make sure that we include everything. Also on the label of your box, you'll have a QR code. And a lot of you has brought to my attention that you don't know what that is. You scan that with your smartphone camera, and it will pop up a link, and all you do is tap on that link, and it will take you straight to the video if you cannot seem to find it inside the VIP group. Of course, it's always in the VIP group underneath the albums tab, and it's a comment, usually in that month's album. Okay, that's the best way that we can keep everything organized. But if you can't find it, just scan that QR code and it's going to take you right to it. We do all of our video tutorials on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. And for you guys, they're set as private. So you do need the link or the QR code to get you to them. So all of the It's in the Box videos are private, just for you guys. All right, inside your box, you're going to have 4 paints. We have Fern Valley, black, white, you have a larger white to make sure you have enough, and Bon Voyage. Set those aside. You have, of course, you have your Home Sweet Home template, or the top overlay. It does have a roof piece overlay to give it some dimension, and you will see there are holes drilled out for the hooks. And then you have the backer board. This is a 1-inch piece of pine that the overlay will mount to give it some stability, and a back to make it sturdy. And then you have your inserts. And as I mentioned before, you have whatever state you live in. The demo is going to be in Michigan. And then you also have this universal plant, or you can make it into a flower, whatever you want to make it into. All right, and then we also have a bag of goodies. And in our bag of goodies, we have a yellow sponge. That is what we're gonna paint the backer board with. You have 3 white sponges for your 3 paints. You have a tube of super glue, and then you have some Velcro. Now you have one, we're calling this the coarse piece. You have one coarse piece. This is the one that gets mounted to the pine board. So after your pieces all together, this will go right in the center here. Now these other 2 are the soft pieces. Those soft pieces will ultimately end up on the back of each of these discs, but there's a trick to getting them on in the right position, and we'll go over that in the video a little bit later. All right, then you have some hardware. So you have the 2 D-rings that I talked about for the hanging, and those have the silver screws, okay? 2 D-rings, 2 silver screws. That's your mounting hardware. Now you also have 2 black hooks, and each of these have 2 small black screws, okay? All right, don't lose those. You'll need them at the very end. All right, so let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to paint our backer board. And of course, if you have alternate paint, you can always use whatever paint you want to use. There is no stencil involved in this, so it's not imperative that you use the paint that is provided to you. Acrylic paint will be just fine. They make some awesome acrylic paint these days that is weatherproof and indoor-outdoor rated, and it comes in a variety of finishes. So if our paint colors aren't your jam, then acrylic paint will work just fine. You can get acrylic paint anywhere. Big box stores, little craft stores. You can get that online at Amazon. Walmart sells Apple Barrel, and of course Michael's and Joann's have their own versions of it as well. So you are going to paint your backer board with your yellow sponge, of course the soft side, and we're just going to put our paint on in a wiping motion, and we want to make sure that we get the sides as well. And I'm going to go ahead and I am going to paint my sides first. Now on the ends, remember it's harder to sand those ends completely smooth, so you do have to use more of a pouncing motion to get that paint into those cut grain there. So just pounce that in there. And then do the same with the other cut side. A little bit heavier, pounce it in there. You do not have to paint the back, of course, but you can. And then I'm going to do my other side, and then I'm going to set it down and do the top. All right. I like to do the sides first because I know that I'm going to get paint on the front of it because my sponge is wider than the edges are or than the sides are. And then I can paint the top and just pick up any excess paint that I got on the top from the overlapping on the edges. And I'll go back and just smooth this out. All right, this is going to need 2 coats. I'm going to let that coat dry. But while I got my white paint out and I'm still working with white, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint the backers of my inserts. I'm going to paint these white. You can paint them shades of the top layer, like in the case of the leaves that was fern. If you want to paint that backer a little bit lighter shade of fern, you can do that. I would, if you're going to do that though, I would wait until you're actually working with the color that you want to paint them. Because I already have white out and I want to paint mine white, I'm going to go ahead and paint them now. On this demo piece, Michigan, I painted the backer a lighter shade of the blue, okay, by adding some white to it. But for now, at this point, I'm just going to paint these white. I might change my mind and end up painting them a different color, but I'm going to get white on them first. And because I have my yellow sponge, I'm just going to go ahead and use my yellow sponge. If you wanted to paint them a color and you were using your small white sponges, that is just fine as well. And of course, materials needed. I forgot to go over that in the beginning. Of course, you need your kit. You know, baby wipes are always handy because, of course, I don't care how much paint I get on my hands. So I always have a baby wipe. You will need a Phillips screwdriver. The smaller the head, the better for those teeny tiny screws. And if you are really particular about where you put your D-ring hangers, then you're going to want to have a ruler and a pencil or a marking pen of some sort. But I just eyeball mine, so yeah, that's up to you. Okay, so these are gonna need a second coat, but while those set up, I'm gonna just set them aside. I'm gonna bring my backer board back and I'm gonna put my second coat on it. Now the sides probably won't need a second coat, especially the cut edges. The long edge may. You'll have to determine that. And I am going to put a second coat on my sides, my long sides. All right, and then that is just going to get set aside until it is fully dry. I'm gonna bring back my circles and I am going to give them a second coat. Okay. All right, now we're going to move on to the large overlay. And I am going to paint this piece black. Now you do have white. If you want to paint it gray with a black roof line, that's up to you. I'm going to paint mine black with a gray roof line. And once again, if you don't like any of these colors, you can always just use some acrylic paint. So I'm going to load my wedge up with some black, and then I'm going to pounce off on my table cover because I just want to work that up into the wedge. And I am going to pounce my paint onto the sky here. You'll need 2 coats on this. So just pounce your first coat, getting a good coverage. You'll miss some spots and that's okay. You're gonna go back and get a second coat on it. All right, our first coat's on this and we're gonna let this dry all the way before we put a second coat on it. But instead of waiting and drying it with a hair dryer and speeding up the video and all of that, I'm actually just gonna set it to the side and I'm going to start painting my insert tops. And while I wait for these to dry, I'll go back and give the overlay a second coat. I'm gonna take another one of my sponges, white wedges, and I'm gonna use the fern paint this time. And I'm gonna paint the flowers or the plants or weeds or whatever this is. It's too pretty to be a weed. You can get as fancy as you want with the sky. You wanna draw in some flowers on it or maybe give it some extra shading. A lot of you are getting really good at doing the shading that we teach you during some workshops when you're here or some projects that are DIY. So you can always do that. You want to keep it simple, you can keep it simple. I know a lot of you do not like projects that are very detailed or that seem more difficult for you to do. Some of you like it very simple. So if simple is your jam, then keep it simple. On this Michigan, I'm going to use the Bon Voyage or the blue paint and a clean wedge. And I'm going to pounce my paint onto this guy. Now with the Michigan, I think I'm going to add some white to it and do a little bit of a variation in color here just so it has something different going on. Once you get your second coat of blue on this guy, if you want to grab its backer circle, you could grab that, put a clean or another thin coat of white on it, and then you could swirl in some blues into this backer circle if you wanted to make it look more like my demo piece, which has, sorry guys, I never can do that right, which has a lighter blue backer. That's up to you. However you guys want to do it. It's your project. All right, so my fern little plant here is dry, and I'm going to get its second coat of green on it. These should only need 2 coats, but if you feel like you need a third coat, by all means get your third coat on there. You have plenty of paint, more paint than you will need. All right, this guy's done, so I'm going to set him aside and just let him finish drying. I'm going to cap my green paint because we are done with the green with the fern. And I'm going to set this guy aside, my Michigan aside, my state, because it's not quite dry yet and it does need another coat. But my black overlay is dry and it needs a second coat, so I'm going to go ahead and put that second coat on now. All right, we're gonna set this aside and let it dry for its last coat there. And while I have my black paint out in my black wedge, I'm gonna take my roof line and I wanna make it gray. Now, you could take some of your black paint and some of your white paint and put it on your surface and mix it together to get the gray if you want. However, this is really small and there's no need to go to those extra steps. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my existing black wedge with my paint on it. It's got plenty of paint in it, and I'm gonna dip it into my white. I'm not getting any paint into my white. Black paint into my white. You can see that all I did was just dip it in and grab some white paint. And now I'm just gonna swipe this onto my roof line. And I'm going to keep swiping until I work some of that black paint down the sponge and into the white, and until I get a gray roof line, a gray color. And I just keep swiping until I get that color uniform and it all blended in so that you can't see any black streaks, you can't see any white streaks, all you see is a gray color, just like that. Okay. Now I'm gonna let that dry and I'm gonna do that one more time. However, at this point, I might have to add just a tiny little bit of black before I dip into my white. So you can see I added just a little tiny bit of black to my sponge. And I'm gonna just dip into my white paint again. And of course you can see I did not get any black paint in there. I just dipped my sponge in just a little bit to grab some. And then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do this again. Same thing, I'm just gonna wipe it on there continuously till those colors blend together. All right, and there we go. And that's got enough paint on it now to give it a nice coat. We're gonna set that aside and let that dry. Now we're gonna come back to our state and we're gonna give it a second coat. Make sure it's fully covered. I'm going to pick up my white paint, still using my blue sponge. I'm just gonna grab a tiny little bit. See, that's so small. I know my fingers are coated in paint, but you can see I just grabbed a tiny little bit of white. And I'm gonna pounce it on the table first so I don't have a huge clump of white. And all I'm gonna do is go around the edges of the outline of the state. It's gonna be tough because this is really small, but I just wanna get a little bit of color variation in there. That UP is really small, so it is tough to do this. But if you just grab excess paint with your sponge and blend it down, it'll be fine. You don't have to put any white in here. You can just leave it the solid Bon Voyage. You can darken your blue up with a little bit of black as well if you wanted to go the opposite way and do a little bit of a darker color. And then remember, you could always color your backer board with a lighter shade of blue instead of around the Michigan or the state. So very, very subtle, very light, just a little bit of difference in color there. Okay, so that's all set aside now. We have to wait for that home overlay to finish drying before we can do anything else. But while I give it another second or so, I'm just going to close all my paint up and get it out of the way. Okay, we're back. All of our stuff is dry, so we're gonna start gluing everything and assembling it together. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to glue the overlay to the base or the backer board. Now what you wanna make sure is you wanna make sure that the bottom of the overlay is lined up with the bottom and the left and right edges of the backer board. Now you will notice that the peak and the roof are going to stick up above. Let's see if we can show you that. They're gonna stick up above, okay? But the board, what we just wanna make sure, left and right flush, bottom flush, okay? So we're gonna take our glue and we're going to run a line all the way around the outside edge, making sure that it's right in the middle. We don't want it to squish out, make a mess on our backer board. Get some of the letters, some of the fatter parts of the letters. You don't need everything. Want to make sure you get the little swoosh mark of the T there on the top, because those are kind of sitting on their own, so they need a little bit of assistance sticking. Okay, and we're gonna flip it over, and then we're gonna line that bottom and the sides back up on that backer board. We're gonna get them nice and flush, and then we're gonna press down and we're gonna hold it for a second. Now remember, pressure activates super glue, but we are gluing birch to pine, and sometimes gluing birch to pine takes an extra second to set up. So we don't get discouraged if it's not sticking right away. It may need just an extra second or two to set up. We had a girl in the studio the other night who was doing a door hanger, and the backer board was hand cut, so we hand cut that out of birch, but it was a different birch than what we use inside of our lasers, and she was really frustrated because it wasn't sticking immediately, and it stuck, it just took a little bit longer. She was losing faith. Okay, that is stuck just fine now. All right, now we are going to glue. We're not going to glue the roof line on yet because I want to do a little something something right here. I want to make like chimney marks. You see on this one I made chimney marks. All right, so I want to make little bricks to make this look like a chimney. And if you have a fine line paint marker, you can use your fine line paint marker. But if not, you can use the tip of like a toothpick or a pin, or I know you all have plenty of these little brushes. I believe you got a little brush in your kit before last. So y'all should have at least a little fine point brush laying around somewhere. And all I'm going to do is just start making brick lines. So there's my first brick line. And now I'm gonna do my second one, which I'm gonna divide these in half like that and draw in my next brick line. Again, I'm gonna go right down the middle and then I'm gonna come across. Okay, that's kind of what it will look like there. We're gonna let that finish drying. And we'll work on doing some other stuff while those little brick lines dry up. We're gonna take our inserts and we're gonna take glue and we're gonna run it in the centers and around the rim, trying to keep the glue in the center. Now remember, if you get too much glue, dab it off on your table cover there so you don't have a ton of it. Pick up your base and you're gonna line these edges up all the way around. You don't want them off. You wanna make sure it's all nice and flush all the way around. Once you get it flush all the way around, that's when you can put pressure on it to activate that super glue. Perfect. Set that one aside and we're gonna do the same thing with the other one. You don't have to hit all the petals, but just try to get a little bit of, at least a little bit of glue on the main ones. And then around the outside rim. Stay into the inside as much as you can. If you get too much, dab it off. Okay, let's flush around those outsides and then press to activate. All right, and there's my other insert. Bring this guy back and I'm going to take my roof line, glue in the center of my roof line, and then I'm going to line that up with the peak at the top here, and then just make sure it lines up going down. Pressure. Okay, there's that part. Now we are going to screw in our hooks. Now our hooks have pilot holes pre-drilled, and don't be alarmed if they don't match perfectly. Okay, the screws will still go in, and you'll still be able to see the holes, the pilot holes, through the holes of the screw of the hanger, but it may not be in the center. It's really hard to get those exactly right. So I'm just using a little stubby screwdriver. It fits, the head of the screwdriver fits into the screws just fine. A smaller one would probably be better, but this is what I have, so it's what I'm using. Now you're gonna screw both screws into there. We tried to find hooks with only one hole, which we had them years ago, but they're out of stock. Apparently they're not making them because of COVID. Even though, you know, we're 2 years out of COVID. Now, just for the demo, I am not going to put the second screw in it because of time, but please put your second screw in. And I might cheat here and use a drill. Okay, I'm going to do my second screw, my second hook. That little pre-drilled pilot hole is really nice. Now, if you have a screw gun, of course, that's really ideal. Really ideal. And you can get your hooks exactly straight by lining up that second hole there. Now we are going to put on our Velcro. Now you'll notice that you got 2 pieces of one and one of the other. The one that you got one of, it's the coarser one, that's gonna go on this guy. So all you're gonna do is, you're just gonna tear it off. Be careful not to touch too much of it. I'm just grabbing it with my nail. And you're gonna put it as best to the center as you can. And push it down. It's very, very sticky. I know you can't really see that because there's so much sun. Yeah, I think I'm fighting a losing battle here. But it's right in the middle, okay? Then you're gonna take your other piece, cut them apart, take it and stick it, take it and push it down onto this so it's perfectly lined up. Okay, see the backer paper is still on the backing plastic. That's so I can push down on it to make sure it's nice on there without sticking my finger to it. Now I'm gonna tear that backing plastic off. And these are so sticky, you guys. I'm gonna tear that backing plastic off. And then I'm gonna take my disc, my insert, and I'm gonna make sure it's right side up. Like the top is at the top, right? And I'm going to press it down. And then I'm going to gently lift it back out. And see what that did? We transferred that in the exact position that it needs to be in to make sure that this disc, that the Velcros line up when the top is the top. Makes sense? All right, now we're gonna do the same thing with the other one. We're gonna stick it on, we're gonna press it down, and then we're gonna peel off that back plastic to expose the adhesive. Okay. Then we're gonna take the Michigan one, making sure that the Michigan is right side up and our top side is the top and it's straight, and we're gonna push that down. And then there we go. We transfer that to there in the exact spot it should be. Okay, so there you go. That's how that's done. Now we've only got one thing left to do, and that's to put the D-rings on the back. And once again, I talked about this a little bit earlier. If you want these exact, a ruler and a pencil will be great. If you are just gonna eyeball them like I'm going to, then go ahead and get started. Now, you can put the D-rings on so they stick up above, so your screws in your wall, you'll be able to kind of like see that from the front, or you can put these D-rings down low. That's up to you. However you want to do it. We'll only take a couple nails in your wall to hold this up, but I am going to put mine low, and I'm just going to start at the edge and make sure my D-ring is at the edge of my wood. If you want these exact, I would suggest measuring to the center of the hole, either from the top of the board or the bottom of the board, and then making sure that's the same on both ends. But for me, I'm just gonna wing it. Now this is pine that you're screwing into, so it is softer. It will take a second to start your pilot hole and get your screw going, so it's, you know, tapped the wood. But it will only take a second, and I'm gonna cheat and use my drill because I got it started by hand. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with the other side. I'm going to line it up so the D-ring is just touching the top. Put my screw in the middle of the hole. And instead of starting a pilot, I'm just holding it till it catches. And I am done. And there you have it. There is your Home Sweet Home key hanger, interchangeable if you want it to be signed. Now what happens if you don't care if it's interchangeable or not? Then eliminate putting the Velcro on, and you can just glue this backer piece straight in there flat to the pine board if you want to. That's up to you. If you don't want to mess with it being interchangeable, then don't. But we thought this was kind of cute, and we're going to offer these to you guys at a discounted rate. So just follow that QR code that'll be on your instructions, and it'll get you to where these are at and give you a discounted rate on them. So I'm not sure how that discounted rate is going to work at this point while I'm making the video. There might end up being a code for a coupon code on your instructions, or there might be a password that you have to enter on the website. As of right now, I'm just not 100% sure. So pay attention to your instructions, and it should tell you how we ended up doing that. All right, guys, thanks for joining us at Running with Scissors, and it's in the box, the July box number 21. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.